All right. So, Sterling, how about that news? Oh, wait.
Wah, wah.
Unfortunately, Sterling will not be with us tonight due to some, I guess you could call them technical issues, still kind of rounding up the equipment and whatnot for his recording stuff. And he didn't want to sound bad because we never sound bad here on Cinema Slayer. So he wants to make sure he can optimize the sound and what you're hearing and the video recording. So he unfortunately will not be able to join us for this episode. So it is just me and Heather tonight. So Heather, we don't have any letters, but how about this? Do you have any news? Do you have anything for us to talk about before we deep dive into this Challengers movie?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any actual news, but I did see this like funny, I guess it's a meme or observation that somebody made online about the the different Spider-Man characters. So apparently, obviously, original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, right? And then you got Tom and Zendaya, obviously, and Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield. All of them dated in real life. And then somebody was like, I guess Spider-Man has a thing for tennis players because all of them were also in tennis movies, like right after they were in Spider-Man movies. So I thought that was kind of like a funny, weird, ironic thing. Like, what are the odds?
That's crazy.
It's not even, I don't even feel like tennis movies are that common. Like, yeah, I don't feel like you see tennis movies all the time. So it's just funny that like that just happens to be like all three of these main female characters or actresses were all in tennis movies. That's just funny to me.
That is kind of crazy how that all just, and it really is kind of a coincidence thing, but it's still crazy how all those coincidences line up. And it just happens to be with these actresses who played the women of the Spider-Man. That's pretty funny though. Crazy, I know, crazy right? Coincidence.
Now, like what, I feel like I know your answer because I think you kind of have a soft spot for this one, but like, okay, of those Spider-Man like love stories, which one of them are you more for or most for? Not in real life, but you know, in the movies.
Man, I mean, I guess that's kind of such a loaded question because it's hard not to be a prisoner of today and just root for Zendaya and Tom Holland because I like them both. I think they're both incredibly talented and they're so successful. They're so young, you know, and but they just continue to impress me with their acting skills. So it's hard not to look at them and I know, sort of root for them in that category. And then, you know, and I do like them as a couple. That they just seem like really cool, really nice, but still very professional young people. So I just root for that. But the comic book fan in me is a really big fan of the Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst relationship. Because to me, that relationship was most like what happened in the books, you know, with Spider-Man having a crush on her, you know, at school and all of that stuff. And the relationship with Harry Osborn and the back and forth of that. And then him deciding not to have her. But then in the second movie, you know, she accepts him. And so they decide to be together. You know, I really like the back and forth of it in those movies. So, I mean, it's a really hard question. I think, though, if we're just talking about Spider-Man couples, I think I'm going to go with Toby and Kirsten. I think I'm going to go with that. And I mean, who can forget the upside down Spider-Man kiss? I mean, that's
it's iconic.
Just iconic
Yeah.
at this point. And none of the other ones have an iconic kiss. So I mean, that's how could you not root for them? So so tonight it's going to be them.
I know. I feel like it can change, like, given the day for me too. But honestly, like, in the movies specifically, I don't know. I just feel like Emma and Andrew had a great chemistry. They just had a really fun chemistry in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. So I think I'm going to go with them tonight. Like, I think both of them as actors are also just very charming people. Like, you feel like they can just really do well having chemistry with anyone. But I think the fact that they were dating while they made this movie, you could just kind of like, it felt like you could feel that dynamic a little bit more with like their charisma with each other and all of that. So I don't know. I just feel like they were super cute and had really fun, like, playful moments a lot that were very believable. And I think that's why I'd choose them. And I'm probably maybe in the minority here, but like, I don't really prefer the original Spider-Man movies over the Amazing Spider-Man or the new Spider-Man movies. Like, they're fine. I have no problems with them. But as far as like how much I enjoyed in the Spider-Man world, I just enjoyed the Amazing Spider-Man movies more. I don't know why. But I just did. And I know I'm probably going to get people to rip me apart for that. But I just really, I think they're widely known to be the worst of the like Spider-Man movies that were made in that time. But something about it was just fun. I don't know. I just really enjoyed them. I think Andrew Garfield is just a very good Spider-Man, you know, like I like what he did with it. And I just like his acting ability and sort of the emotional angle that he brought to Spider-Man. And I think that's why I like it. I don't know. But that being said, I mean, Tom Holland is the Spider-Man for me. He is the best of the three, 100%. Like, I don't know what it is, but he just nails it, you know? And I think there's always been that argument of like, you know, Andrew Garfield is a good Spider-Man, but Tobey Maguire is a good Peter Parker, but Tom Holland is both equally as good. So I think maybe that might be what it is. Like, he was that perfect balance of, you know, Peter Parker and Spider-Man together. So I feel like maybe that's why he's the best one. And he's the one that I feel was definitely closest to the real age of Spider-Man when he made the movies. So he actually has that more like younger kid or like teenage kid mentality and vibe about him than the others did, because they're obviously at the time in their 20s, I think, right? Playing a teenager in high school. So I feel like the fact that Tom Holland probably actually was that age, maybe a year or so older than that, but it felt more like a natural way to get into being that character. So I don't know, but that's me. I mean, and all day I will take Tom and Zendaya's love over almost anybody else's. I love them. I think they're so cute. So I get it. Yeah. You know, I get there, and I mean, they've been together for a long time at this point, right? I mean, since the first movie, I think, or like shortly after it, which was at least 6 years ago. When did the first Spider-Man come out for the Tom Holland Spider-Man? It was like 2016, maybe. I don't know.
Something like that.
Let me see. What's the first one called? Far From
Homecoming.
Home? Oh, is it? I thought that was the second one. Oh, you're right. I think you're right. It is. It is that. 2017 is when that came out.
Close.
So,
yeah. You were pretty close on the date. And yeah, I think I tend to agree as far as what Spider-Man is better. I mean, it's hard not to go, I mean, people have their favorites and everything like that. But yeah, the argument that you presented is the argument that I hear most of the time, is that Tom was just the best of both worlds. And I think I tend to agree with that. Like, even if you are a person who argues that the later Spider-Man movies are not exactly crafted the same way that Spider-Man was crafted in the books, or as far as comic accuracy and stuff, because there are people that are going to be all on that. But Tom Holland captured the youthful energy of Spider-Man. He just really had that. Also, Tom Holland is an exceptional athlete. He can do gymnastics and flips and stuff like that. I was scrolling on my Instagram the other day, and I want to say it was his Instagram. He had posted him on the set of No Way Home, and it's him hooked to wires, jumping, flipping off cars and rolling and running up to the car to save somebody. And it was him, and of course there was a green screen and there was all of this other stuff, but it was him doing all the flips and stuff. So he's the only person that has played Spider-Man that you could say could actually do some of the things that Spider-Man
the stunts
could
and stuff.
And a lot of those stunts, he was doing them. So I think that there's something to be said for that. Like and I really like just some of the stories about him behind the scenes, how when they considered him not being Spider-Man, he went to different directors. He talked to Sony, he talked to Marvel, like he actually tried to continue to be the Spider-Man character. Even when they considered making a change, he fought to be the character. And there's just something about that. So when he performs, all that energy and the passion that he has to play Spider-Man, it all comes out on screen. And I just think he did such a great job with that. So yeah, he's always going to have my vote as far as who the best Spider-Man is. And yeah, I know that the Andrew Garfield movies kind of get some flack, and he only really got 2 and they really didn't get to the 3rd one. But about his relationship with Gwen or Emma Stone in that movie, he's the only Spider-Man out of the 3 that we got to see lose his girl. Gwen actually died.
Yeah.
So he does. So some people really hold that relationship in high regard because they were good together. They had good chemistry, but it was very tragic what happened to him. And that's why in that scene in No Way Home where he saves Zendaya and Garfield kind of has that moment where he's thinking about Gwen Stacy. Wow, I almost said Mary Jane. I had a brain fart there for a second. But yeah, whenever he saves her and he's thinking about Gwen Stacy, and it was almost like this redemptive moment. A lot of people came to the forefront and said that was one of their favorite scenes in that movie. Or at least when the Spider-Man got together, because that's how much that relationship meant to people. So there's something to be said for it. You can argue the quality of these movies all day, but I mean, but definitely it was an impactful relationship. Yeah. So I get a little bit where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. And that for me, that was 100% one of my favorite parts of that movie. I thought it was so great. He got his redemption for what happened, and just that movie in general, it's a lot more emotionally charged from all of the Spider-Men. Even, obviously we see Tobey Maguire in the first one, loses his uncle, all of that. And, I wouldn't say it's the best scene of somebody crying that I've ever seen. It was a little, hit or miss depending on the day for me, I guess. But everything he did in this film, for whatever reason, really worked. Tobey Maguire was very much he had the right emotion and he conveyed it so well. And it's almost like, he's been acting for several years now since then. So like, so he's obviously perfected his craft a little bit more and all of that, and again, like no shade to Tobey Maguire. I do like him in general, but then, but I think Tom Holland is a phenomenal actor. I think and I think I've said it a couple of times on this podcast, like the way that he delivers a line can just like cut you, like moments in the Avengers movies that happened. Like, I don't know what it is. And I think even in that, what was that animated film? Onward. He was the voice in one of the voices. And I was like, I just remember one line in there he said, and I was like, this kid, like he can just say a one-liner and just, he gets you in the feels. Like he's very good with that. But Andrew Garfield is so good with that too. Like that moment when he does, he catches MJ and just everything he conveys with just all he said was, yeah, I'm good. Like, but everything that he went through when that happened was perfect. It was so good. So yeah, I agree with you on that. But I also just like off screen though, the things that like Tom and Zendaya do, they're so cute. Like you feel like it's not just like a relationship for the public eye. It's them just actually being a legitimate couple. Like even I think this week on Instagram, Tom Holland went on there and he's like, I know what I'm doing this weekend. And he's like showing a picture of Challengers and just like fully supporting her. And I don't know. I think the way that the way that they talk about each other when they're being interviewed is so great. Like they'll ask Zendaya questions like, who has the most Riz out of the people from the Dune cast? And she's like, who has really great Riz? Tom Holland. Like she just always is respectful. Like, you know what I mean? Like she doesn't just shut it down, but she tries to segue it. You know what I mean? Like I think she's smart enough to know how it works. So yeah. But that's another thing too, is I was seeing some like press and like interviews and stuff for this Challengers movie. And, they keep asking Zendaya about kissing her co-stars. And if it's weird to kiss your co-stars since you're friends with them, like essentially her and Timothy Chalamet. And like, oh, what was that? Was that super weird? Because you guys are good friends. Like, how was that? And like, just really so many people were asking her that question. And you just feel like, why? Like, and one of her responses was like, well, that's what we do. That's our job. Like, if the job calls for you to do that, that's what you're doing. And it's not hard to do. It's written down for you to do it. So you do it as an actor. And you could just tell she was fed up with them asking her that question. It was almost like people were trying to create this like discourse in her relationship for zero reason or something. Like it just is weird when people do that. I don't get it.
Yeah. And you got to understand that like when they're doing those scenes, and people don't get that either, sometimes you're doing so many takes and it's not romantic. It's just like, okay, we got to do this over again, or we got to do this for the fifth time, or we got to do this and then re-preparing and all of this stuff, so there's all these other things that could go into it. And then you've got 50 people watching it and trying to get the angle, or, well, that was a bad angle. Let's do it this way. Or can you do it more this way? Like it is the furthest thing sometimes from something that is romantic, or trying to imply that could this be weird with you being in a relationship and then you're kissing these other guys and stuff like that. It's just interesting that people don't understand that, or they try to act. They try to imply that there's more to it than just acting.
Yeah.
But haven't actors and actresses been doing this for years?
Literally what I was just thinking. I was like, they also act like people haven't been doing this since movies were movies. Like, what? Yeah. I don't get it. Sorry, did I cut off your thought?
Yeah, no, like they just don't understand that there can be a difference. I mean, shoot. And this may seem unrelated, but I think it kind of is. But like, even in pornography, those models and actresses have husbands and wives and stuff like that. And they do that, and then they can compartmentalize and separate, and then they still go home to their significant other. And you've seen interviews and stuff where they're like, yep, this is my job and this is what I do. But every day I come home to my husband or I come home to my wife, and even they say, what I do with a man or woman will say, what I do with my wife or husband is not the same thing that I'm doing on set. That's work. That's different takes and all of this angles and all of this other stuff. But but what we have is what we have. That's special when I come home. You hear people who show the ability to compartmentalize and do this all the time. So it's just funny but I think maybe to a person on the outside looking in, they're just like, oh man, I couldn't kiss somebody else. And then it just be a kiss with somebody else. So they're thinking about that, and not really thinking about the job. And these people have been training to do this kind of thing their whole lives,
Right. So. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and also, how do you just get really into that when there's like intimacy coordinators and there's like people filming you, people directing you, and how you need to be kissing, and like, it's not romantic. I don't feel like, I don't know, but I've never been on a movie set for that. So I don't know, but it just feels like it wouldn't be romantic.
Yeah, it doesn't. And you do hear stories of people on a set where, I mean, we've seen it too, where actors and actresses have been on set and they were in a movie where they were playing the love interest, and then you find out afterwards they were dating. But
yeah,
I don't imagine it is because they were just sitting there kissing each other. And so that's how it led to them deciding, well, after the 8th time kissing him, I was just like, shoot, I need to date him. I don't think it happens like that. I think it's weeks and weeks of being together, doing the movie together, being able to talk with each other, being able to learn who each other are and stuff like that. And then something, and I mean, the kissing and stuff probably doesn't hurt, but I just don't feel, I feel like sometimes people like fantasize these things and they just think, oh, that must be why they're together because of, these scenes and stuff. But I don't think it really works like that. I think it's the weeks and weeks of just being together. You're seeing that person every day for this job on set and stuff like that. I think it develops into that, but I don't think it's necessarily because we're kissing or we're the love interest, but I think people just make it a bigger thing than what it is.
Yep, I agree. But it's also like, I feel like it can fall into that category. I heard people talking about like just the audacity for them to only be asking her about that, really. Like, I don't know how much they're really asking anybody else about that, but I could be wrong. Maybe they're asking Timothée Chalamet the same thing. But I think I saw one interview where he was talking about it. But yeah, I just feel like it's almost like that same vibe of when they used to ask women all the time, how do you get in shape and stay fit for this role? And like, what's your secret? And like for looking good in this role, when it's like, you don't really ask that to the guys. It's super weird. Like, I don't know. But yeah.
No, I think that it's good that you brought that up because I do think that there are, it can be a bit of a double standard when it comes to how people question things about women and female actresses versus men. I definitely think that's a thing. And we've seen it before, or even I think about singers and different things like that, and how I remember how Britney Spears, it was like they just couldn't wait for her to be, when she was just still in school and doing the school uniforms and singing and that stuff, it was just like, oh man, when are you gonna, always asking her, so when are you gonna go more sexy, or asking her, who are you dating and stuff like that. And she was like 15, 16 years old, and they're already trying to push her that way before it's time. But then you think about the Jonas Brothers and stuff, and nobody was like, when are you going to take your shirt off? You know what I mean? Like, nobody's asking. A lot of times, I don't think the guys are getting the same kind of treatment.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So I would imagine Zendaya gets a lot of questions that Tom Holland doesn't get. I imagine.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting, too, that you brought that up about, because I was also seeing this interview with Raven Simone. Her and her wife were on a podcast maybe or something, and talking about how it was for her to be like a 14, 15-year-old girl on a Disney set, where they're essentially telling her that she needs to lose weight and all this stuff as a young teenager. And
yeah.
And she's like, no, they told me I had to wear very specific things. And I had to even wear high heels because high heels are supposed to make you look more slim and all these things. So she's like, I'm 15 years old. What is this? It's crazy, but it's not surprising at the same time, which is really sad. But I'm just man, you never think about those things being a thing for teenagers on shows as much as just grown adults. But yeah, even good old Disney has that being a thing that they do. So I don't know. It's really sad because you're just what kind of, I don't know, message are you sending? I feel like your body's still growing and changing and everything at that age. Chill. This is an actual teenager,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just going to take more people putting their foot down and refusing to answer questions like that or calling out when there are things asked of them that are questionable like that. And, got to be more, and especially with the younger kids and stuff, parents got to be more involved. Parents got to be like, well, you could ask this and this, but we're not talking about this, or, we're not doing that. So, and especially with that documentary that just came out, Quiet on Set, that really kind of shows how much this stuff needs to be monitored and how there is this sort of culture, when it comes to children, women, different things like that. So I think it's just going to be an effort to stomp that out whenever it's present, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah,
it will.
Yeah. But, anyways, all that to say, I'm glad we talked a lot about Zendaya because we got a lot of Zendaya talk to going forward.
Nice transition.
It's the seamless ones. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We're learning.
A seamless segue.
Yes. I'm going to hit that music.
Somebody will listen to me. Nobody knows anything but you. All right. Are you ready? Yes. Come on.
Cinema Slayers.
Hey, Cinefans. And just like we sort of said at the beginning of the episode, it is just me, your resident wrestler, yes, sir, Jastin Taylor. And I'm here with the first lady of Cinema Slayers, Heather. Our fearless leader, Sterling, is unfortunately not with us tonight, but we are still going to talk about everything we liked, disliked, and everything in between when it comes to the new Zendaya film, Challengers. So I can't wait to dive into this one. This should be a pretty fun episode to talk about, I think. So with that being said, we will have our spoiler-free section to start things off. We'll then go into recommendations and scores, and then Heather and I will end things with a little bit of spoiler talk and bring us all home. So with that being said, Heather, what are some of your spoiler-free thoughts on this here Challengers?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think it was a really solid movie. It was really good. I think that the story was entertaining. I think the performances were excellent across the board. And I wasn't bored at any point in the movie. Like, I feel like it really, from the jump, it reels you in to these characters. It reels you into what's happening. And they do it, like, they tell this story in a very, I would say, kind of unique way. And it's not a perfect movie by any means. Like, I think there are some elements to the story and how they told the story that probably could have been, in my opinion, done differently. But overall, yeah, I mean, like, and I'll just say this, I don't care anything about tennis. Like, I have zero interest in tennis. I respect people who know how to play it, as well as especially the characters that you see in this movie. But it's not something that I just want to sit and watch. But this movie was like, you know what? I'm interested right now. This is intriguing. This is some good tennis playing, and this is really good just energy you're giving me with why I should care about this game and why I should care about your game that you're playing. And they did a really good job of that, you know, and like, it's not one of those where they need to be like, here's how you play tennis. Here's the rules. Here's what you do. It didn't need to be that, because especially if we're coming into this movie from basically the eyes of people who play tennis. So I like that they didn't do the exposition for exposition's sake of trying to explain what this was, because it's obvious what it was, you know. And I like that they really just kind of drop you into like whatever level of tennis knowledge you have in the moment when you get there, because you understand enough about what you need to for this movie based off of the characters that were dropped into and the story that we're dropped into here. So I thought that was good. I think that the chemistry between all three lead characters is fantastic. I think they all had really great scenes together, really great chemistry when it was all of them, really great chemistry when it was just like two of them playing off of each other. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, because especially with what this relationship between them is, like, you have to really kind of have a good connection with each other for it to work like that. So I think everybody was really well cast in this movie. And I just kind of like the way that they leave it, you know. For now, I'll just say I did want more. I was ready for more, because it was an interesting story, and it is a story that makes you want to kind of keep following these people and what happens with them. So yeah, I would say overall, I thought it was a really good movie. I wouldn't say I wouldn't call it a great, amazing movie, but I will say it's a very good, solid movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably more of a tennis fan than you, but not in the sense of, oh, I play tennis, or I'm like a super fan, or I follow tennis, and no, I couldn't tell you who the top 5 are right now or anything like that, you know, nothing like that. But whenever there were certain stars that really kind of commanded a following and there was a craze over them, I did get more into tennis. You know, when Roger Federer was going on that incredible run where he was just winning all of these opens and championships and stuff like that, I followed Roger Federer for a little bit. So I saw a lot of his matches and everything like that. Venus and Serena Williams, like, even if you didn't play tennis, you probably know who the Williams sisters are. And they created such a craze whenever they were just winning and dominating tournaments and stuff like that. And like watching some of these people, you just couldn't help but be glued to the screen when you watch them play. So there was something about like when the stars come out watching them play. And then, you know, I mean, I'm just going to sound just like a total guy here, but there are a lot of hot women who play tennis. I mean, I'm just saying, like there's been some that even though they don't win all the time, there are some women like I can't, like, the immediate names aren't coming to me, but I do vividly remember growing up and being like, seeing a woman in Sports Illustrated or something and being like, whoa, what does she play? And finding out she played tennis. So, you know, like, so there's a little bit of that too. So I probably followed it for my own reasons a little bit more than you did, Heather. But through maybe not following that for the purest of means, I did develop a respect for the sport. And sometimes when it's two people that are of about even skill or having a match, sometimes there's nothing like watching the sport of tennis. And it can be really intense. And as they hit the ball with the racket, they're yelling and screaming, and there's all this intensity coming from them, and it just the back and forth of who's going to slip up first. It can be a real exciting sport when you get two opposing forces together that really just want to win that game. And I think the triumph of this movie is that they tapped in to how intense tennis can be, to how competitive it can be. And one character described it as it's almost like being in a relationship. And I love how they took, or it is a relationship in some ways. And I love how they took some of those elements that are great about tennis and somehow made it parallel with this love triangle and these three characters that we're talking about. And because of how sharply written the script is, I agree with you, Heather. The writing is so well done that there never seems like a dull moment in this movie. Like everybody, you're just glued to the screen constantly. Like when they talk about a movie with actors and stars that just kind of demand your attention, this is definitely one of those kinds of movies where the star power and the acting ability, and maybe it's also that these are just attractive people. You just, and the way this was shot was very just, it was beautifully shot. And it so attractive, not just the leads or the people we're talking about, but just even the way that this was shot. It was shot in a very visually pleasing way. So you can't take your eyes off of it. And then the soundtrack was pretty fire too. Like everything that they picked and how the scenes were going together and how intricate like the music was to everything that was happening. It all just creates a style that at times is just mesmerizing. Like you're just watching this going, man, dude, this is just so compelling. And you want to know what's going to happen next. And you're wondering, and it's weird because it's like, who do I root for? And then you just ultimately just wind up being a spectator and you just want to know, how is this going to turn out? How are these characters going to win? Is anybody going to win? And it's funny because I say all of that, and ironically, I'm not talking about a tennis match. I'm also talking about the relationship with these characters, but it flows so well into the game of tennis. And I really think that that's sort of the triumph and the genius of the film. So it's superbly written. It's superbly acted. I mean, Zendaya is great here, but the other leads are very good too. So everybody just kind of played their roles. You know, Josh O'Connor, who plays Patrick, and Mike Feist. Is that how you say that? Feist?
I believe it's Feist.
okay, Feist, who plays Art Donovan, they're great too. You know, the guys are very good in this. So, and watching the previews of this, I really didn't know what this movie was going to be. And I like the way that they did the previews for this movie because they show you things and it feels like a bait and switch for when you actually watch the film. Nothing happens quite like the impressions that you got from the previews. So I think that's good. It added to this and gave it an unpredictability. It does have an ambiguous ending. So we're definitely going to have to talk about what the interpretations are on the ending. And I know that sometimes when a movie ends ambiguous, it can sometimes be a turnoff for people. Sometimes people don't want to sit through a movie and go, I don't want to interpret it. What are the answers? You know, Sterling is kind of like that with some movies. You know, sometimes he's like, man, all these interpretations, just give me the answer. Like, what are you really trying to say? So I think in the spirit of that, that could be off-putting for some people. But overall, I really enjoyed this and I think it's really good. And I think that other people, for the most part, will enjoy this too. Very compelling, very well written, and overall, like you said, Heather, a very, very solid film from top to bottom.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I do agree with you. Like, just, there's something about the way that each of these characters kind of draws you in from their perspective too in this movie, you know, because I feel like each of these characters has a lot of flaws and they each have their own thing. They have their own burden to bear and everything else. But like when you're watching this movie from whichever perspective you're getting of these characters, it makes you conflicted because I'll say this, like I thought, you know, in the first, you know, 20, 30 minutes of the movie, I was like, I know which character I think is going to be the right character choice. I know which character I know is going to be the good person in the situation. And then you kind of find out that no, like it's just one of those movies where in any given scene or scenario or time lapse that happens, like all three of them make some choices that are just questionable choices. And it's one of those where you want to root for them for different reasons, but you also are like, I don't want to root for you for other reasons. Like it's conflicting like that. But I love that because I feel like that means you're making real characters. You're making dynamic characters that can be relatable, but at the same time, like you love to hate them, you know, like that whole mindset of it. Because I mean, I don't think there was a like real, I mean, I guess there's technically protagonists, but not really. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, or maybe it's like they all were. There really are no heroes and villains in this. Like you said, everybody is complex. Everybody is flawed. Right. But you do essentially have three characters that are trying to fill something. And really the story is sort of about each of their individual journeys of fulfillment in some way, or at least I think it is. But yeah, I didn't feel that there was really a hero and a villain. And like you said, the movie kind of goes back and forth, almost like a tennis ball going across court back and forth with one person will do something and you'll be like, uh-oh, you know, and just when you think maybe this person is the hero, nope, not quite. And then maybe you think this character, nope, not quite. And like you said, it makes for more realistic, more complex characters. But I think you're right. It's not as simple as protagonist and antagonist in this movie, which I think makes it interesting.
Yeah. You kind of feel like it's almost Game of Thrones-ish with it. Because there's always like, for every like solid thing or good thing that a character does, they do like 3 bad things right after it. You're just like, what's going on here? Yeah. So I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many, I don't know, there's so many things and factors to this story, but I mean, yeah, like I'm ready to get to it. So, I guess we get on to our recs and whatnot.
Yep.
Recommendations and score.
All right, you go ahead, Jastin.
All right. Yeah, I think overall I'm going to recommend it. I think, I mean, honestly, I'm thinking about the lineup of movies that have come out that we've seen so far. And I don't know if there's anything out quite like this one. Like it's interesting because we did a film review about A Love Triangle last year, a movie we all really were a fan of and really loved. Oh my gosh, what was the name of them? Past Lives. Yeah, Past Lives. And that was a love triangle about 3, like, for the most part, good people. You know what I mean? And then this feels like a love triangle between the total opposite kind of thing, where it's sports and it's competitive and it's just, I mean, absolutely hook, sometimes by hook or by crook. Sometimes it's the ends justify the means. And sometimes it's just crazy, fiery love affair type stuff. So it is definitely not Past Lives. You know, this is a totally different type of love triangle. But in a lot of ways, it can be just as entertaining, just as compelling, just as interesting, but for different reasons. So I think it's worth a shot. Just if you're looking for something that's a little unique, if you're looking for something that's kind of different, if you're a fan of tennis, you might appreciate some of the shots in this and how it's portrayed as a sport and how that ties into very much how they told this story. Because essentially, the way a tennis match can go is how the story is told. So the story matches the tone of every sort of round or set that you're seeing in a tennis match. The story tries to match that kind of tumultuous back and forth intense tone that tennis often brings as a sport. So it was interesting. I found it really just compelling in that way. So I don't know. I think that if you're looking for something like that, then this will be right up your alley. Now, this is more adult. You're talking about people having affairs, and I mean, you're talking about, you know, sex and desire and all of this other kind of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe if you're a person who wants your movies a little more straightforward, or you don't always, you know, morally agree with people who live their lives like this or something like that, you know, maybe that person is bothered by this, but I don't know. It's movies. I just try to analyze and look at the characters and just enjoy them. And, you know, we're all adults here. I'm not going to go off and do what these characters did or anything like that. I just kind of like enjoy seeing new characters and new things and things that I can't often see in the movie theater. So I think overall it may, and like I said, the ambiguous ending may be off-putting for some, but overall I would recommend people give this a try. It's just got some amazing acting, some amazing set pieces, some amazing writing. And I think that most people would appreciate that. I think most people will find this entertaining. And a lot of critics and people have used buzzwords like, man, this is sexy and it's bold and it's fiery and you'll be dazzled by what you see on the screen. And a lot of times those buzzwords, sometimes they could kind of overdo it because they're trying to get you to come see the movie. But you know what? I can say the movie does have a style to it. It does have a very sexy vibe to it. It does have a sense of confidence and vibe, and it does have a sense of color, it does have all of that, a passion about it. It does have it. So, I mean, this is one of those where they're not lying about it containing a lot of those things. And I think all of those things, for the most part, made for a very compelling film. It's a little over 2 hours, so it's not too long, but I do question if maybe it could have been shorter. I wonder if it could have been 15 or 20 minutes, especially with the type of ending that you were going for. I just wonder if maybe we could have cut some. I mean, nothing immediately comes to mind, maybe when we talk about it in spoilers, but you get the feeling, did it have to be as long as it was? You know, I did leave sort of thinking about that. But overall, I wasn't bored. I enjoyed the film, and I think others will too. So with that being said, I think I'll give it a B. I think I enjoyed it enough to at least give it a B. So we'll go 80. Man, what do I want to give it? We'll go 80. I mean, we have to talk about the scene. We'll go 80 backing away and letting your two guy friends kiss out of 100.
That scene. It's just funny because of that's literally the scene in every trailer promo for this movie. And then you're just kind of like, I do feel like it was a little built up for nothing, you know? But anyways, but yeah, I would recommend this movie. I do think it's good, if for nothing else, for the incredible acting performances. I think it's a great movie to showcase really talented actors. And it's a great movie to showcase what it looks like when you have a good chemistry with scene partners and things like that. I think that's really good, a good thing that they do in this movie. So yeah, I think, and again, like the story is interesting. You know, you're on your toes. You want to know what's going to happen, you know, with the story within the story, but also the backstory. Like you want to know how it's all going to go down and how it's all going to end. And I do agree with you. I think that there are some things I think that could have been cut out, which we can get into, to just sort of hone in, I think, what they were trying to do here with the ending and everything. But yeah, I do think it was a good movie. I think it's, you know, it's got a certain like style, and it's got a certain kind of like energy and vibe about it that is entertaining. It's just a very entertaining film in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would recommend it. I'm going to give it 83, almost forgetting about your date at the bar out of 100. And do you want to let us know what Sterling's thoughts were?
Sure. So Sterling quickly hit us up and said, excuse me, sorry, I recommend. He said it's fine, not great, but pretty good overall. Acting is great. Story is cliche. The narrative structure is unnecessary. And he gave it 72 friend makeouts out of 100.
There it is. Yeah.
So with that 72, 80, and 83, the official Cinescore for this is a 78.
Okay. Not bad at all.
Not bad.
Yeah. Cool. Are we ready for spoilers?
Yes, we are.
All right. Spoilers. I feel like we'll probably have a lot of, if you will, back and forth, no pun intended, about about some of this stuff. But I will say one thing that I just wanted to really quickly bring up with this is when you mention that there are things that could have been cut out, I feel like the thing that they could have cut down on is just the how back and forth Zendaya's character Tashi, how back and forth Tashi was between these two guys. I think that could have been cut down because I feel like you get enough, especially with the buildup of the story and understanding, because this movie does a lot of flashbacks and then flashing to the present day. And you, from the context of that, you obviously understand what these people's relationships are to each other, where they're, kind of at with it. And obviously Tashi being very conflicted about, who she wants to be with in a lot of cases. And even when she is with, it's clear that she ends up with Art, she marries Art, they have a kid together and all these things. But, she sometimes still, wants to hook up with Patrick, and like there's just this whole back and forth. And then like I feel like you get the point of that. You understand what that is. But then they'll do things like, for example, there's a scene in the movie towards the end when Tashi and Patrick are talking and Patrick's like, oh, does he know about wherever they went? One of the places that they went. Was it Arizona or something? I don't know what it said.
Atlanta or something like that.
I think it was Atlanta. Yeah.
I think it was Atlanta.
Just that'd be so random to be like, does he know about Arizona? Like, does he know about Montana? But yes. Yeah. And then, he says that. So obviously we know what that's implying, but then they still feel the need to cut back to show us what happens there. For example, I don't think that was needed. I don't think they needed to show us because I feel like context clues tell you what that was, And then I also feel like, and I'll let you give your thoughts on the ending before I say anything about it, but I do feel like they also, there's certain things they didn't focus on in this film that I was curious about a little bit more than they kind of gave me information on. Like, for example, obviously, Art had some kind of injury or surgery because you see, his shoulders here, like all messed up and stuff. They don't go over what happened there. They don't really talk about that. And I think that could have been an interesting thing to kind of throw in here as far as how it makes Art's character who he is and why he thinks the way he does. Like he's obviously so in love with Tashi. And it's like, well, maybe if she took care of him while he was getting better, like maybe that's something of why he's just even more in love with her or something like that. They just don't really go into what happens to him. And I get that it's not necessarily just about him, but I feel like they brought that up for a reason, but they didn't really expound on what that reason was for why they had that in the movie. Because honestly, with what they give you, you could have taken that part out and it wouldn't have changed anything about the movie. Because he's still just a tennis player that's getting rusty, not as good as he used to be, struggling through. And it didn't indicate that was specifically because of his injury. They didn't say like, before this happened to me, I was the best. you know, like they don't really say that that's the reason for his rusty playing. So I just feel like, well, what was the point in having that part in the story, you know? And then another thing that I was wondering about was, you know, we see that obviously Tashi and Art have a little girl together. You see a handful of scenes, or maybe 2 or 3 scenes of Tashi with the daughter and them communicating and having a relationship. You don't really see their daughter have a relationship with Art. And I'm curious about that because I think that that would have also kind of pulled the audience more towards rooting for him as like the good dad, or, you know what I mean? And they didn't choose to do that, which is totally fine. I'm just curious why they didn't really show him having some form of relationship with the daughter other than the scene we see where, you know, he fell asleep next to her in her bed. So yeah, just a couple things like that I'm just curious on, you know, you put those in there for a reason, but there wasn't anything clear on why. So maybe there's another cut of this movie where there's more scenes that that maybe explain some of that. But yeah, that was just a couple of things that I was like, maybe would have liked a little bit more with that. But again, it wasn't enough to take me out of the entire movie altogether. Just some thoughts about it. But yeah, I just, man, like the way that they show Tashi just being an absolute beast in tennis is so well done.
Yeah, that was great.
From the get-go, as soon as you see her step onto that tennis court, you're just like, yep, this is about to be crazy good. Like, just even without seeing her do anything, just the way she walked in and the confidence and everybody just loving her and cheering for her. She wasn't nervous at all. She just really set the tone for the type of character that she is in this movie. And that was a really good way to show sort of a little bit more of her, why she's that way. So, and also
just how enamored Art and Patrick were with her.
Yeah.
Seeing her, and just how you could just see how much she meant to the both of them, and just how enamored they were with her, and just the fire that she sort of is able to light under them both, as far as just what they, you know, because they are both love the sport of tennis. And then she just, you know, not only was she a woman, but attractive, but also she was like this tennis prodigy. So she's good at it, you know? So that's like several levels of admiration, you know? And it's kind of a different level, because, you know, it's one thing when, like, and I'm not saying you necessarily need this to admire somebody or fall in love, but sometimes it is different when you see someone who is in something that you can relate to, or you do, but they do it well. There's something about that. There's something about the confidence, and somebody who can do a job you're familiar with well. There's a bit of a connection, because you know what that person does. You studied the same thing. You go to the same job. You go to the same. So when you see somebody at the top of the profession, there's a certain level of just respect and admiration that comes with that, coupled on top of being attracted to this person, and then coupled on top of watching her perform on the tennis court, and she's such a great player and commands that attention. So there's all sorts of levels of admiration going into that they were feeling at the same time. And it's a credit to both of those actors, because you could just feel it in everything that they showed. Their facial expressions, just how glued to her they were. Like, you could really see that. So there was no doubt in your mind that, although it becomes sort of this game where both are sort of vying for her love, you knew that the feelings were genuine in both. It wasn't that thing of, oh, well, this one just wants to have sex or whatever, and this guy really cares about her. It didn't really seem like that was the dynamic. You could tell that both of them had the same kind of admiration for her at that time.
Oh yeah. No, that's a really good point. Like that one scene of them first seeing her like talking together as they're first seeing her together for the first time, like that set the entire tone of what their relationships would be. It set the entire tone of what this movie was going to be like. And it was a really good way to show that. Like, I love that the film making of this just allows you to feel it without them telling you how you need to feel about it. It already gives you like the feeling that you should have about what's about to go down, or like at least get you invested immediately. You know what I mean? So I would totally agree with that. And like, it was hard because I was trying to figure out who I thought Tashi had better chemistry with. And she kind of just has it with both of them. You know, she's got great chemistry with both. It seemed a little bit more natural with Art. And I think that throughout some of the scenes that you see, he seemed to like genuinely make her laugh, you know? And so I feel like that felt like it was the better fit. But then you see certain other scenes with her and Patrick, and you're like, I get that too. Like, you know, so I don't know. And that was interesting because maybe that was the point. Maybe they're just like, we want to show you both sides of both of these people because now you understand what Tashi's conflict is. Even though technically Tashi is so, I mean, one track minded is just not even the word for it. Like, tennis is the only thing she cares about. And you're right. I love that they kind of had her character explain how tennis was supposed to be like a relationship. And I think that that's because for her, it was like, that's the relationship she wanted. That's like, you just see how hard it is for her to admit love for anybody, you know, like her own husband is like, hey, I love you. She's like, I know. And then, you know, I think Patrick, well, technically he just said like, why do you hate him? And she's like, I don't, you know, like it's just hard for her to be vulnerable with somebody emotionally or on that level. And it's interesting because I feel like the thing it told me in this movie is that's because she doesn't want anybody. The only thing that she really ever wants in this life is to play tennis and be amazing at it, or help other people be amazing at it, since she was injured and couldn't at that point. But yeah, I just feel like that was a little bit of a foreshadowing, maybe, you know, of Tashi's character. So I don't know. I thought that was well done.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with that because, yeah, what she was in love with was tennis. That's what she was in love with. And so, and you can see, and if you look at it through that lens, it's a little easier to understand what happened and the dynamics of these relationships, because her love was tennis, and her love for tennis is so incredibly strong, but that it mesmerized these two men. And these two men are sort of in this contest, kind of vying for her affection at different times throughout the story. But the interesting thing is that what she loved about them was their tennis ability. If anything, or not even, I wouldn't say love, but I think what sort of drew her to them was their ability to play. And like, she knew one of them. And so like, you essentially have these two men. One of them was successful. You know, Art was successful. He had won some championships and she was his coach and everything, but she just had these incredibly high standards. And you could tell that Art had lost his passion for the game. he was getting buried under her expectations and what she wanted him to do. And you need to win this and you need to get your confidence back and stuff like that. And then on the other side of it, I think Patrick just sort of kind of had this rugged kind of swagger and charm about him, and she often said, you're not really a tennis player. Like she would say, you're good or whatever, but Art is the one who has the potential to go somewhere. So it kind of makes sense that why she married Art, because she felt like he had more potential as a tennis player. Like, you think about that. If you think about her love for tennis, then you can kind of understand maybe why Art was the better choice for her, because potentially she saw more in him to play tennis. You know what I mean? I think some of that is definitely there. And yeah, there were other things, like when she got her injury, Art was there more than Patrick was. And so that was kind of a thing where, or you could also argue maybe Art sort of forced himself in, whenever she got injured and stuff. And maybe Patrick didn't quite get the chance to be there like he wanted to, because Art kind of forced himself in. So, you can have all those arguments there, but so some of it situationally was that. But when I look at Zendaya as a character, her big thing was the love for tennis. And she loved being able to sort of, and there was a bit of a power play too, how she could control them. She
knew fully that she had control over both of them.
Yeah. And nothing sort of encapsulates that more than the three-way kissing scene when she sort of backs up and they're all kind of kissing each other, and then she sort of backs away and watches with this smirk on her face, almost like this sinister but kind of "this is who I am" smirk on her face as they're kissing each other. And then when they realized kind of what was happening, and then she's like, okay, I'm going to leave. Like, it wasn't going to get any better than that for her, because she had already kind of showed the control that she has, So of course that character left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just this whole thing that she kept saying, I don't want to be a home wrecker when it comes to the two of them. And I think, like, when you look at their relationship, I think that they lost their way in tennis because, in a way, they were sort of holding each other up. They had a competitive kind of spirit about them, and they had a friendship and a bond about them that sort of drove their passion to be good tennis players. And when you remove that, when the two were removed from each other, you saw that really both of them struggled. Art struggled to keep his passion. Patrick was struggling to make ends meet. He just moving around and just kind of playing to play. But I think they lost each other. Their relationship is significant because they lost the competitive spirit. They lost that fire that they brought out of each other because they weren't together, So I think that's a part of it too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel so bad for the guys because they both got so displayed. But yeah, I would agree. And like, it was, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, because it's not like I don't think she didn't care for these guys at all. But like, for example, when she was like telling Art, like, if you don't win this match, I'm going to leave you, and like, I full on believed that she would, but then it was like, then she goes to Patrick and says, hey, lose the match. Like, it feels like, did she not actually want to leave him? And she was just saying that because she was hoping that was a motivating factor for him to win. And then on top of it, to guarantee that he went to Patrick. I'm just trying to figure out like fully what her motive was for doing that, because I don't know. She did seem genuinely upset about the thought of like leaving him in that life, but at the same time, she did what she did, So I don't know. I'm curious if that's how you interpreted that.
Okay. Yeah. And I do think there's definitely some of that. I feel like Zendaya at the end of the movie, a lot of it was the ends justify the means. I don't think necessarily that, because the whole purpose of this from the start, she made her purpose clear. We got to get your confidence back so that you can get out there and start playing winning tennis again. Because she is very much a character that what she loved was tennis and being able to win and being competitive and being at the top. And unfortunately, when she had that knee injury and could no longer perform that herself, then she devoted her time and energy to, she wants to coach the best player. She wants Art to be the best he can possibly be. And this whole thing, the whole purpose of this was to get him to get his confidence back. The interesting thing is that's where Patrick comes in, because when Art was at his competitive best, Patrick was in the picture. When because he was fighting, and not so much like in the way of tennis, because he was successful once Patrick was out of the picture with Zendaya. But in the contest for Tashi's affections, that's when you really saw Art and his competitive spirit and him really trying and him really being motivated really came to the forefront. When he was trying to get her, I remember a scene where he's talking to Patrick, and this was while Patrick was dating Tashi, and and basically Art is kind of trying to tell him like, well, you are seeing other people, right? Kind of trying to justify in his mind a reason where he can try to kind of talk to Tashi or potentially take her. And I remember Patrick going, you're waiting for me to screw up. This is you waiting for me to screw up so that you can swoop in and try to get it yourself. And I remember Patrick going, I like this side of you. I've never seen this side of you. This is the most competitive, and you seem to be, you seem to really want this, and you seem driven on this, and you're playing the percentages. You're hoping that I screw up and then it'll be your chance. So you're being patient, but you're trying to hang around. And I just remember Patrick analyzing him and saying, I have never seen you like this. I have never seen you so motivated to try and get something. So I feel like they're throwing you these tidbits and all of these things. And the kissing scene, it may seem like something kind of funny. Oh, she just leaned back and they were kissing each other. But ironically, that is essentially what happens at the end of the film. She goes up to Art and tells him, okay, if you don't win this match, I'm leaving you. But then she goes to Patrick and says, I want you to throw the match and everything like that. And they slept together and everything. But I feel like Zendaya knows both of these men. She knows that if she tells Art something like that, that's going to motivate him to play his best. And maybe that fire that wasn't there, it could be lit into him again somehow. But at the same time, Patrick is directly tied to that. by telling Patrick, I want you to throw this match and everything like that, she knows that that's going to ignite something in him too. That the competitor in him, is he really going to go for that? Because he already feels like he sort of didn't get the girl right. You know, Zendaya married Art, has a kid with Art over here and everything like that. She obviously has, I think, complex feelings for both of them and everything like that. But honestly, I feel like all of this was a manipulation to ignite the fire that all of them had lost in some way. Art lost his passion to play tennis. You know, Patrick was barely holding on, but he wasn't playing good tennis either. And she wasn't feeling like she was able to get the best out of either of them, and mainly Art, but she wasn't able to get the best out of him. So I think at the end, when you see them sort of, they're out there seemingly playing for her, but then all of a sudden, you see the competitive spirit with both of them. The match is super intense. And at the end, when Art almost has that accident trying to hit the ball, and they grab each other and they hold each other, and there's this embrace, and the match is not over. You know, nobody had won yet, but I think that embrace is similar to what happened when they were kissing each other, and her standing back and marveling at what she was able to bring out of them is sort of what she did at the end of that, when she was like, let's go. And she passionately screams out, let's go. And remember, we had only seen that part of Zendaya or Tashi when she was playing. You know, finally we saw that fire from her again. And it was because of what she was able to do and what she was able to ignite with these men. So something about the three of them they bring the best out of each other in this sort of weird, almost crazy, almost dark kind of way. They all need each other. And I think that's what you saw at the end, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. Another thing at the end too there was, I did like the callback to Patrick doing the symbol on the racket for him to let him know what was up. But like, see, and that's where I'm getting conflicted, because I'm like, I don't fully know what the motive was there. Because at first I was like, oh, that's cool. He's just trying to let him know that, you know, she's not worth it, basically. But at the same time, like, he was also had this like smug look on his face when he was doing it. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's just trying to get in his head. I don't know. But it almost, and just sort of his reactions throughout the match, it just felt like maybe he actually did want Art to win. You know, like, he knew that he was down on his luck. Like, I'm just trying to have this money, and that's the reason I'm doing this, where, you know, he kind of just saw what it meant to Art. And obviously knowing that Tashi came to him too, he's probably thinking like, oh, this must be legit if she's coming to me and asking me to lose, you know? And I don't know. I wasn't sure on the motive, but I really did like that they, you know, Art smiled and then Patrick smiled back, you know, kind of like that, understood like, yeah, we're here for it. We're back in the game. We're doing this the way we should have been doing this. And it's a great moment in the film because it's subtle. You don't need the words. You don't need to have them explain what that means. It's just them, you know, understanding it for each other. And I really liked that. I thought that was great. Like, I don't know, is it just me, or like, does it feel like either one, all three of them just need to be in the relationship together, or the two guys just need to end up together? Like, I feel like it's got to be one or the other, because whatever it was wasn't working with just Tashi and Art. So I don't know, but I really did, while I liked the way that the movie officially ended with like, obviously they're cool. They're friends again. I just was like, what does this mean for their marriage? What does this mean for like what is Art going to do now that he knows this? Is he going to still want to be with Tashi? Which he probably would, because everything he showed us in this movie is like he would do anything for her and doesn't care what it is. So he might have, but I don't know. I'm just curious, like immediately following that and like a month after, what happened with their lives? Who were they to each other after that point? So I don't know, but and also that was another scene that I feel like could have been done differently or cut down. The scene when she's going to Patrick, she meets him and he does the Uber thing and they're talking about him losing the match. She basically says like that she would sleep with him if it meant that he would lose the match for her or for Art or whatever. And like, I also just don't feel like we needed to see that scene. Like, I feel like there's a part when they're fighting and arguing about it and she walks away and then gets him to come back and she like spits in his face. Do you remember that part towards the end?
Yeah.
I feel like leave it at that. And then that whole scene with Patrick doing the symbol to let Art know what was going on, let that click with us then, like we don't need to see it in that moment because it's very obvious what's about to happen just based off of like her face and her look that she's giving. So what if we cut that part out? Like where you see them, having sex and then talking afterwards and all that. Like, what if we don't need that part? We can just cut it out and say, I hate you, but obviously I would still do this. And the longing looks and the spit, cut away, go to the next thing. And then it's the whole thing about Patrick doing the symbol. I think that would have been a better reveal because then for us, we're getting confirmation of what happened at the same time Art is. So I feel like that just would have been a better way to do that scene. And then cut down like, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, maybe. I don't know. Maybe 3 or 4 minutes. But I don't know. I just feel like certain things like that where they just give you so much of the back and forth between them is not needed. There's good moments in there of dialogue and conversation and stuff, but I just feel like you can condense that down because we obviously get that there's tension. We get that you guys aren't talking to each other anymore or whatever. So, I don't know. I just feel like we didn't necessarily need that. And it could have been something to cut out even more of the runtime of the movie to still make the point that it wanted to make. But I mean, I also just find Tashi's character so complex and fascinating because if you also think about it too, she seemed to have a good relationship with her mom from what I could tell, with grandma being around. And her mom just seems like the nicest lady who ever existed. I'm just kind of like, where did Tashi get all of this from? Because you feel like, I don't know, somebody who has that much self-determination or something, you feel like, what is it that drove you to that? And it's so easy to feel like maybe it was the way she was raised to be that into it and whatever. Her mom seemed very chill. So I'm just very curious where this just complete drive and passion came from to like an insane amount more than it should be, which is why she was great at tennis. But just stuff like that where I'm like, I wonder like what that story is. Why is she this way? Because she's so complex. So she's like, I don't need anybody to love me. And then also flat out telling Patrick, listen, you're not that good at tennis. It's embarrassing to be together. Like she just pulled no punches. She was always just straight to the point with all of it. And a lot of what she said to him in different times is truth. She was speaking the truth, but you're just like, okay, like, let's take a minute here because I don't know. So, I feel like there was another specific scene, but I'm not remembering it at the moment. But yeah, so that's all I have right now. So go ahead.
No, you definitely made some interesting points. And yeah, like the Tashi character is very interesting because really her relationship with tennis just drives how she looked at the relationships with everybody else. So it's just interesting how she saw them as players was very similar to how she kind of saw them as potential lovers. Like, you know, that played out to how she saw them even as lovers and things like that. One thing that I definitely wanted to talk about that I think is also interesting about the movie is how the storytelling paralleled what was happening during the challengers match on the court. Like, sorry, excuse me, but
that's a good point. Though,
like, yeah, like that was really cool. How like the first set, Patrick is winning, and he has the advantage over Art. And that's the first set. And as you're watching the first set and Patrick winning, he's also winning, if you will, in the story. Because in the first act, while we're seeing the flashback scenes during the first set, he's the one who's with Tashi, and they're the one in a relationship, and everything is kind of going okay and everything. And what is interesting is that when we go to the future a little bit, and Tashi is kind of talking to Patrick, and he's trying to say he's still pretty good and all this kind of stuff, or he's really good and all this stuff. And she's like, well, that's your problem. Your problem is that you'll be winning in the first set, but then you tend to fall off in the second set. Yeah. And she's talking about his tennis game. But what's so cool is that in the movie, by the time we get to the second set, Art starts coming back and beating him. Yeah. And then Art has the advantage in the second set. And then while Art has the advantage on the court, the part of the story that we are seeing is how when Tashi got the injury, Art came in, he started to win her over, and eventually they got married. So the way that Patrick kind of falls off in the second set when he plays tennis was kind of how he fell off with the relationship with Tashi. So I loved how that was mirroring what was happening. And then during the latter sets of the tennis, it was back and forth. You know, one person seemed like they had the momentum, then the other person had the momentum. And that's how it sort of played out with Tashi and what was going on with Art and Patrick. There would be times where it seemed like Patrick kind of was getting in there, kind of getting what he was wanting. And then there were times where it seemed like Art was really down and not sure if he wanted to do this anymore and things like that. But then, you know, he would have a moment with Tashi or something like that. And then it would kind of be like, okay, you know, maybe this is that there is some sustainability to this relationship. And, you know, and there are times when he's like, I think I'm going to give it one more try at the championship and then I'm going to retire. And then she was like, well, you do what you want to do. And he was like, you know, what do you want me to do? And you could tell that she still wants him to play, that she still wants to win as many championships and wants him to be the best player. You know, she doesn't want him to quit, but she couldn't even say that. She couldn't even say like, she's saying, do what you want to do, but really, you know what she wants him to do. And that's to play his best tennis and not retire like, you know, a down on his luck kind of failure. You know that that's what she really wanted out of him. And so I feel like she just showed that she was willing to do almost anything to get that fire out of him. And even if it meant rekindling this love triangle in a way, even if it meant maybe sleeping with Patrick to motivate Patrick to confront Art that way, because she knew that it would light a fire under Art. She knew that they needed each other to sort of reignite that fire in him again. So I feel like she manipulated and did this and sort of turned this situation, but the means was to help them better play tennis because she needed ultimately Art to find his stroke again and play better tennis. And he does in the end. So it's crazy because, like, in a way, her being unfaithful, the act of being unfaithful was sort of, in a way, what got her husband's confidence back again, which is what she kind of wanted in the first place. So in a way, she got what she wanted, just found the worst ways to get it. But ironically, that triangle was the very thing that they all needed. That was when they all were kind of at their best doing their thing. So it's a dark ending in a way, morality speaking, but it is the ending for both of them for all of them, because they all in each other brought out that thing or that fire that ultimately was why they all played tennis, was all tied to each other. So it's just a very interesting way of looking at it, because on the outset, people are going to see that she slept with Patrick. And I think people are going to home in on that, and they're going to focus on that and go, well, what she did there was bad. So what were her true intentions? But when you go outside of that and you look at this initial goal of trying to reignite him, if that was the goal, then she totally did that. So I imagine he goes back on the tour and maybe he does win a championship. I mean, maybe he can win again, because by the end, he was his fiery old self that she was trying to bring out of him since the beginning of the movie. Although this was a hell of a way to bring it out of him, but perhaps it was the necessary way. To bring it out of him.
Yeah, I mean, and part of me too, like, wonders if the conversation she had with Patrick about just what their motives are, and like him questioning how she feels about her own husband and all these things, like if at some point she was trying to prove to herself, like when she had that conversation with Art, when he's like, I want to retire. Are you going to love me no matter what? I feel like her reaction of, you know what, do what you want to do kind of thing. She's trying to prove a point to herself that she's not the person that Patrick said she was, even though she kind of is that person. You know, in a way, like in a different way though, because she at least wants him to win and is trying to make sure he does, guarantees that he does win. But yeah, I wonder if part of her was doing that too, to just like try to make herself feel like I'm not like that, you know?
Yeah, I think some of it definitely was that. And the thing is that Patrick is right on some fronts when he was like, why do you hate him so much? But the interesting thing is, I don't think that Tashi hates Art, but what she does hate is his lack of competitive spirit and the fact that he was not playing tennis up to the potential she knows he can play. And why don't you play up to your potential? Because if it were me, if my knee wasn't hurt, if I could get out there and do what I wanted to do, I would be playing with all of my potential and all the love for this sport in the world. And here you are with all this talent. I know you can win, and you're not living up to that standard. I think she hated that his passion was gone, not him himself. I mean, they had married, they had a kid together. I think she did have feelings for him, some point. But what she hated was the tennis part of him that was lacking.
Yeah, and it's almost like she loves tennis more than she loves him. So, of course, that would be her choice every time, would be tennis over anything.
Yeah, like there are feelings for him, but she can't completely love this lack of passion Art or anything like that. And I don't know if she could love no matter what, because the admiration she had for him was directly tied to his tennis and his competitive. That's who she fell for.
Yeah.
She fell for this go-getter. And that's another thing you got to think about with her too. What kind of art did she fall for? He was bright-eyed and energetic and full of potential, and he was competitive, and he was really trying to, and he wanted her like nothing else. He wanted her like nothing else. And he was willing to, even sever the ties with his best friend who he had grown up with, who showed him how to masturbate. They told that story and everything. Like, him and Patrick had a big time bond. They were like brothers.
Yeah.
So the person that she fell for was an art who really just did everything with a passion and a competitive spirit and a will to try to win. And I'm saying a will to win, but I'm not talking about tennis, a will to win her. And that's what she fell for. And the moment that was gone, she's trying to do everything she can to restore it. So you got to see that from her perspective too. That's what she fell in love with. And that wasn't reflective. And he wasn't reflecting that when he was in this rut or this slump or whatever in the film, because he's sort of fallen out of love with tennis. But he's more of a human being. He's not wired that way. He's like, well, I may not have tennis, but I'll still have you. I'll still have my wife. I'll still have my daughter. It's all good, but she isn't wired that way at all. Nothing like him. She's not wired that way.
Yeah.
And I think Patrick, in a similar way to her, and this is why they clicked so much in a way, he didn't have the potential that Art had, but he loves tennis like her. He wasn't the best at it. He wasn't the most skilled at it. But dude, that fool was living in his car and doing online dating just so he could shack up and have somewhere to stay with a woman and stuff like that. And just playing whatever tennis he could, because this is all I know. Tennis is all I know. He just wasn't as manipulative or as kind of crazy about it as Tashi was. But you can see where the connection with Patrick comes from, because they did both share that about tennis,
Yeah. And like, something I will say I appreciate about Art is the fact that he at least was honest with her, like he was at least like, listen, I don't want to do this after this. Like, I'm done. And that had to be the hardest thing. It was almost like that was the first time that he had stood up to her, probably in a long time, if ever, really, to just be like, I know that this is what you want, but this is not what I want. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I respect the fact that he did that. And immediately following that, him being like, what does this mean if I tell you that? And like, so he knew there would be consequences, even though he was honest with her about it. And I don't know. It was such a strange relationship and marriage that they had. But like, I don't know. It was almost like he knew what he was getting into. Like, he knew what he was there for. And I think in his mind, he always was going to want to be with her, no matter how much she treated him the way that she did. And it was almost like he was okay with and resigned to the fact that he was always going to be second to tennis. So I don't know. I feel like that's just, that was an interesting character arc to give him, but I liked it, because I mean, and the way that Zendaya played this character was, I don't know, is something else, because like, you get why they're so intrigued by her, why they're so in love with her and all of that. But you also just understand, like, she is damaged. She has a lot of things that she doesn't like. She doesn't even want to try to like change anything though. And that's the thing about her. But with the character that she is, you don't expect that she does. She's just like, no, I'm good. I'm good being me. I'm good treating people like this. I don't care because I'm all about me, which would be also interesting to see like how she's raising this child because if that's, but I mean, the child was around the grandma a lot. And like I said, grandma seemed fine. Grandma seemed totally great. So I don't know. That was interesting, but I don't know. I also just think Zendaya can't do anything wrong. Like, I just feel like she's like, this is almost like an accelerated version of just Zendaya being just awesome at everything and like just totally confident in who she is. But I also feel like, and this, I guess, this is not really supposed to be a knock on Tom, but on Tom Holland, but this is an example of she knows how to choose the right projects to be a part of. She's always been very good at picking smart things to be involved in. I just feel like Tom Holland hasn't had quite the luck with that. Not yet, because he definitely has the potential. We've seen him be really, really good, and we know his acting ability, but he just hasn't really picked projects that have landed or hit the ground running. And Zendaya just seems to be very good at picking the exact right roles and movies to be invested in and involved in. So, you know, respect for that, because like anything she's in, she just shines. Like she's always the best thing of anything she's in, most likely, you know, except for, I mean, she's not in Spider-Man enough to be the best part of it, but she always adds some kind of element to where you're like, I need more of her. I just do. So, and I think that's why she plays this character so well. I mean, it was just so natural. Like everything about what she did felt so natural. She felt like a very real person. Like if you told me Tashi was like based off of a real tennis player and this is how she was, I would believe it. I would completely believe it. I don't know.
Yeah, like she really was something in this. Like, I mean, shoot, I could understand why the guys were enamored with her because, man, she was like everything in this movie. She just had a great energy. She just was in the scenes where she was supposed to be super hot. She was in the scenes where she was supposed to be like about the business. She was in the scenes where she's kind of conflicted or you're wondering what hand is she playing? And she just kind of she just had a way of having the poker faced up, but you know on the inside there's something she's thinking about, or maybe there's an ulterior motive. Like she's just so great at playing complex characters. And I think that when it comes to Tom Holland, I get the sense that that Zendaya has embraced more mature roles and more like adult roles and complex characters and stuff like that. And maybe it's just, maybe it's how casting and people write for her and see her, but it seems like she's always been able to delve into that realm. And when I look at Tom Holland and some of his film choices, it feels like he's still kind of on that thing. And maybe this is just a choice, but it feels like he still really wants to be the young kid. Like he feels, I think he feels like that's what he looks like. That's what he's good at. He still wants to kind of play that role. Like when you look at the Spider-Man movies or the Uncharted or how he fought so long to stay Spider-Man, like it feels like he's more comfortable doing that stuff, jumping and flipping around and all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't seem like he is in a hurry to get to like that other side of filmmaking where you're playing these complex characters and everything is heavy and stuff like that. Now, I know there's some movies I haven't seen. I'm sure he's delved into it a few times, but it seems like when he's really alive and when he's really got that fire that the guys were looking for in this movie, it's when he's playing something more youthful and energetic. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a question of his ability because I think he can play those roles, but I'm wondering if this is more about a choice and he's just gonna play
Just
the young
having
Rose
fun.
for as long as he can
Yeah.
and have fun. And then when finally he matures more and he doesn't look like that anymore, maybe that's when he'll start to make the turn. I don't know. It feels like a choice though.
That's fair to say. Yeah, because even in the projects that he's done that were not great movies, there wasn't anything wrong with his performances in them. It just happened to be movies that did not work for the majority of people that saw them. But it was never him. It was never a him problem, you know. It's just, I feel like we've talked about some of these actors too, where like, yeah, they're so good, but they do not pick the right projects to be a part of. So yeah, I mean, because I know for a while, a lot of people talked about Johnny Depp always picking great projects. And that's, you know, why he's been so successful. But, and I think there might be some truth to that. You know, he has picked a lot of good things to be invested in or a part of in film. And Zendaya is also on that track record. I know she's got significantly less roles under her belt, but like even that movie, what was that movie? Malcolm and Marie. I didn't mind that movie. I don't think a lot of people loved it. It was a fine movie, but like their performances were great. You know, they did great in their performances. You know what I mean? Like, and I got to say that that's probably if I had to pick, the least good movie of Zendaya's, in my opinion. And that's not even saying much because that's not even a bad movie. So I don't know. I just feel like she's doing a good job at picking things. Like, I don't feel like she's at that stage where she's just picking things just to be in stuff. She's picking stuff that she's like, I've thought this through. I like this character and I know that I can bring this character to life. Yeah, you feel like she has a whole thought process with it. And I just respect that in this industry too. Like, I don't know, just feel like a lot of people don't really think it through. They're just like, cool, paycheck, time to get going. But yeah, I love Zendaya though. She's great.
Yeah. And when you hear her talk sometimes just about the movie roles that she picks and some of the ones that she doesn't pick, I remember there was a role in particular where in an interview she said that, well, the woman is and if you look at the woman in history, it's a darker complected woman. And I, being a light-skinned actress, don't want to take a role away from somebody who is darker complected than me. I don't want to do that. Like, you got to understand how self-aware and how mature and how incredibly thoughtful something like that is. And I feel like she seems to be a woman on a mission. Like, it feels like she's, and I don't know how true this is. I mean, I'm just kind of shooting from the hip, but I get the impression that she's got a lot on her shoulders, whether it's just mentally she feels being a minority actress and just the history of Hollywood and minority actresses and stuff like that. I feel like there's a real mission with her to be respected, even in her youth, like to take respectable roles, to be appreciated for her skill, not just her looks, to be appreciated for what she can bring to a role, not just for the sake of diversity. It feels like she's trying to do all of it. She's aware of all of it. And she's trying to transcend all of that. But at the same time, I feel like she feels like she's also setting an example. She just feels like somebody who understands all of the optics when it comes to Hollywood.
That's true. And so young for that.
And to be so young, but to have such an understanding like that is impressive in and of itself. But then you see her play these roles and you understand why. Yeah. Like, she really is that damn good. She really is that talented. And she really is just that self-aware of what's going on with her. And then she says, and a lot of times she turned down roles because she didn't feel the female lead was strong enough, or she didn't like the messages that she thought were perpetuated in the role and stuff like that. Like, you hear her talk about this stuff and you would not think that it was somebody that young talking about this stuff. But she's already there.
Oh, yeah.
And some actors and actresses, it takes 30s and 40s to get to that kind of mindset. She's already there. So I don't know if this is a byproduct of people around her, like family members and parents and agents
keeping
and
her grounded. Yeah.
Keeping her grounded. I'm sure some of it is that too. But man, she's got an incredibly good head on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Uncanny almost.
Oh, yeah.
For somebody so young.
I mean, and then there's also that, like, I feel like there's a pretty famous interview out there where she's being interviewed by Issa Rae. And, you know, she told a story about how, like, there was I think it was some kind of event or something like that where a magazine cover that she was going to be on. And, like, she had her hair a certain way and they told her to change it. And because in a sense, I feel like what she's saying was that they told her it was like too black of a hairstyle or something. And so she told her, I think it was her agent or whoever it was, like, hey, yeah, like, I don't want to change it. And then all the lady said was, you know what, like, we don't want to push them because you're, you know, the first, like, black person to have this spot. So, like, let's not push it. Basically tried to be like, let's not cause a problem. And Zendaya was like, yeah, we're not going to be working together anymore. Like, and I respect that. I'm like, good for you. Like, you did, you kind of like know what your worth is in this industry. And that's great, you know?
Yeah. She's just not having it, man. And,
she doesn't compromise herself. And like something else I've noticed too, which this could, I feel, just because like I feel like she's always very like you said, very self-aware and like makes very conscious decisions. Like you in any movies or roles you see her in, as far as I've seen so far, she hasn't ever done the like nude thing. And some people are fine doing it, which, you know, if they are, do it, you know what I mean? But she plays characters where she's supposed to be like very, you know, sexy, or she's like having a lot of sex or whatever it is. But she goes about those roles, like, for example, in Challengers, when, you know, there's a lot of moments like that, but you don't see anything, you know what I mean? It's just suggested, and the way that the chemistry is between them and all of that, that's what makes it feel that. You know, you don't need to see things to know what is happening here and what this means. And so, I don't know, I just respect that. And I feel like that's like a conscious decision on her part, but I could be wrong. It could just be like, it didn't call for it. But I mean, this movie had, you know, naked guys. So, you know what I mean? So that's why I feel like in those moments, like, it's really just her choice not to do that. In Euphoria, like, where a lot of the other cast members are doing that and she's not. So I feel like that's why it's a choice, you know?
No, that's a good point. Yeah. And like in those movies, yeah, she just, like you said, there just doesn't seem to be compromise in her. Like, it just feels like it all just means more to her. Like,
yeah.
And I can respect that. You know, I can respect somebody who sees it that way. And up until this point, she's been so successful. So you can't even really look at her and go, hey, calm down, or just be young, or just be a kid. She's past that point. It's working out for her, this mindset that she has. So,
yep.
And like this movie, like I could imagine her reading this role and understanding the position of power that this woman has and how complex this woman is. And I could totally see her loving a role like this and taking this because, this is definitely a woman that is unique and interesting and has all these layers and all these motives and intentions. And I could see this being a fun challenge to play. And I bet she was just so happy to do this. Like something like this is right up her alley.
Oh, yeah.
So
powerful female lead. Yeah.
So I think we can expect to see more of this, from her, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I also, just because I think it'd be fun to see her in a rom-com. I just think that'd be fun. But yeah, I think anything she touches will be good. But yeah, that's all I got on this movie. What about you?
Yeah, I think I am. I think I'm done as well. So I guess we will wrap it up. So thank you, Cinefans, for joining us one more time for the Cinema Slayers podcast. Definitely check us out on all of our social media, Cinema Slayers podcast on Facebook, Cinema_Slayers for Instagram and X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. We're also on, what is the name of that thing?
Letterboxd.
Letterboxd. Yes, we're on Letterboxd, Cinema Slayers. We're on Threads with Cinema_Slayers. So catch us on all those platforms. And remember, let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. So comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, when this episode comes out, please comment, man. We love to hear from people. We want to hear your opinions. What did you think of this film? Do you think we got it right with our interpretations, or were we way off the mark and it was something else? That does now remind me of something. I do hear that people thought that at the end, when the two men embrace each other, it was saying that the two men need to be together. And that was the point, is she was out of the picture and the men realizing that they ultimately need to be together. I didn't have that interpretation, but I did hear it from several people. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's a wrong or right, but I found that interesting.
Yeah, that isn't, because my first thought was like, oh, why would she have been like so happy if that's what it was? But at the same time, if she doesn't actually love either of them, then why not? I guess. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. She was super happy when they were kissing each other.
That's
and
true.
then people were like, people are trying to draw context clues from everything. Well, one taught the other one how to masturbate. They were in the sauna together, all naked and stuff, and just staring at each other. And there was they have these moments where they're really close with each other. So people are just trying to draw conclusions from all these things and saying, did they have a thing? Was that their way? And then he caught him at the end. He wouldn't let him fall. So I think people are reading in and interpreting that. But that's kind of what's fun about an ambiguous ending such as this. It leaves it open for you to interpret all these things. Yeah. So like I was saying, comment, do you think that any of that was the case? So we definitely want to hear from you. So with that being said, tell your friends, tell your families, tell everybody in the world, and especially tell those mothers, because mothers love
Zendaya all day.
Yep. And I love her too. And she was awesome in this film. We want to thank Mondo Ochoa for our logo, respectively. I forgot to thank him last time. I remembered this time. So yeah. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, we are pro slut, pro Sydney, pro naked.
You are Knuff.
Yes, you are definitely Knuff. All you Cinema Slayer fans out there, you are Knuff. We're justice for Chris. Justice for Todd.
It's like we add a new thing every time. I think that's it. I know,
we add a new thing every time. I don't know, justice for Art and Tasha's kid.
Right, for real. That's true.
Didn't get enough FaceTime with either of them. So, man, she's left out in this relationship. Nobody was talking about her enough.
Man.
But Well, she has a grandma. She has a grandma. And with that being said, the last thing is, according to me, Moon Knight is a Best Picture winner. I really didn't say that. It was really an accident. I hate you, Sterling.
You're so disgruntled by that.
Yeah, after, 12 years? I don't know. Seems like it's been such a long time.
Such a grudge.
It's still a running joke.
All right. Are you ready? Come on.
Cinema Slayers.
All right, I'm out.